As mental health therapists, people are oftentimes coming to therapy because they need to work on issues related to boundaries in their life. That could look like setting boundaries, maintaining boundaries. It could look like responding to situations where people in their life are not respecting their boundaries and they don't like the way that that feels. And sometimes therapy clients actually end up crossing or pushing our boundaries as the therapist. This actually happens more often than you might think. And we need to know how to respond to this in a way that is professional, that is assertive, and that's going to help maintain good therapeutic working relationships. And so today I'm going to talk about why this comes up to begin with and why you might be seeing this in your therapy practice or your work with clients. I'm also going to talk about what not to do. And then, of course, what you can do to make sure that you are addressing this in a healthy way. So, what does this look like? So, this could look like a lot of things. You, as a therapist, have your own boundaries that you set, and I hope that you're letting people know from the get go what those boundaries are, especially if it's related to expectations about attendance, communication, what happens if you can't make the appointment, different things like that. But when someone, a therapy client, is pushing against our boundaries as a therapist, that could look like not respecting the attendance policy. That could look like not respecting the ways that we said were appropriate ways to kind of communicate with us. So maybe we've said, if it's an emergency, you need to call me, and they send me an email. Or that could look like, hey, I've repeatedly said that, and you agreed upon the fact that, hey, you need to let me know 24 hours in advance if you're going to miss your appointment for any reason. And they continuously seem to let you know several hours before they are coming, or they don't let you know at all and then go, oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. That could be a way that they're kind of pushing against that boundary that you've set. So there's lots of ways that that could look. In therapy, sometimes clients are coming to therapy and they've got their own stuff that they're trying to work on, and boundaries may not be the focus of what they want to work on, but they have issues with respecting other people's boundaries. And so you, as a therapist, you're not immune to that. You're in the crosshair of that. And this actually isn't a bad thing. This is a teachable moment. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But it still happens because if I'm trying to work on this issue in my life, that doesn't mean that it couldn't potentially show up in the therapy room in one way or another. So, those are all reasons that it might happen and also what that actually could look like. Now, let's talk about what not to do when a client pushes your boundary. Now, we need to remember why they're there, right? So, clients are there to gain self awareness, gain coping tools, look at relationships, look at unhealthy patterns. There's a lot of reasons that people come to therapy. And we want to make sure that we're remembering the goals that they have set, because this all needs to funnel back into the goals and ways to help them continue to improve and gain self awareness about how they show up for other people. And so the way we respond really needs to always come back to the work. What is the healthy working relationship? What are the boundaries that we've set? What are the expectations that we've set? And how do we make sure that we address issues in a way that is therapeutic, relates back to goals or things that they could work on, but also is coming from a very compassionate, helpful place? So, what that means is we need to not respond in ways that we might in our personal life. What I mean by that is when someone crosses your boundary, it is natural to not like that or to have some feelings about that. And if you, as an individual, would potentially call somebody out very abruptly in your personal life, or you would get really pissed off, or you might snap back at somebody, or what have you, this is not where we need to be. We need to be able to put that aside and actually respond in ways that are going to be helpful and supportive. So, the first thing that we need to make sure that we're not doing is that we're not taking this too overly personal, and we are not looking into this too much as a, oh, this is a personal attack against me. It is likely that if they are not respecting an aspect of our boundary, that either we have not clearly communicated that, so they just didn't understand, or there's an opportunity here for growth to help them identify how they're showing up right now is not working, or they are likely doing this in a lot of other areas in their life. And so you, like I said a minute ago, you're just in the crosshairs. They're not treating you any differently than they would anybody else. So it's not personal. We need to make sure that we are keeping that out of it and not reacting personally. Now, I know it might bring up some feelings of, I don't like this, or this feels frustrating, this feels disrespectful, this feels like they're, not being respectful of my time, or whatever it's bringing up for you. But we do not want to respond to that feeling internally. We actually want to be able to set that aside and respond in a professional way. Now, I don't want to shut down either, because if maybe as a therapist in my personal life, I struggle with, speaking up and being assertive, I need to make sure that I'm not modeling that unhealthy communication style for the client, and I'm not saying anything either. So we want to make sure we're saying something. Don't say nothing. Don't fold. Don't pretend it's not happening. But also, we want to make sure that we're not going in the other extreme, which is I am becoming very reactive. I'm becoming very aggressive, very mad, very frustrated, and I am showing that to the client. That's not appropriate or healthy. So we want to neither be in either of those extremes, but actually be in the middle, which is okay, I need to set my stuff aside and I need to say something. So I'm not being passive about this, but I need to do so in a way that is healthy and supportive. So we want to make sure that we're not falling into either of those extreme of avoidance or aggression. And I want to make sure that I'm not pretending that this doesn't bother me. If it bothers you, it bothers you, and that's okay. You're human. We as therapists are not robots. We have our own reactions to things. And people violating or crossing our boundaries or pushing against our boundaries can just feel very frustrating naturally. And so I don't want to ignore that either. I want to make sure that I'm taking time to deal with that later, but that I'm not just sitting here and pretending it's fine. Because if I have a client that is pushing boundaries often, I'm not saying anything, they're not aware of that. What is that doing to my view of the client, my desire to work with them, my ability to continue to show up in a way that's non biased, non judgmental, supportive, warm, empathetic? Like, am I starting to feel resentment? Am I starting to feel frustrated? Am I starting to feel like, oh, I don't really want to work with them? Because that is all very real possibilities that could happen when we avoid something. So we don't want to avoid, but we also don't want to take our frustration out on them. And always remember, there are probably a lot of reasons that this is happening in the moment. Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's not be quick to say, oh, I don't want to work with you anymore, or you're just not, you're not respectful, and so that's it. But I actually want to try to address it in a way that's healthy and supportive, and also in a way that still maintains my boundaries. So we want to avoid those at all costs. And I don't want to punish a client. So if a client is not being respectful of the boundary, there's ways to handle it, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I don't want to do anything that would make a client feel like I'm punishing them, like, oh, well, I'm not going to see you anymore. That would be really for, I would say, very extreme circumstances only, where the boundary issue is either impacting your safety, impacting your ability to work with them in some capacity. It's making you feel unsafe. It is a repeated, like habitual pattern that's impacting the work. Like those are extreme circumstances. And what I'm talking about really is more of the, hey, I'm pushing your boundary. I might or might not know that I am pushing your boundary. I might or might not know how to handle this. And I just need this to be addressed in a way that allows us to continue to work together. So we also don't want to punish people. But let's talk about, what do you actually do to make sure that you're handling this well? So first, I want to acknowledge it and I want to talk about it. I, as a therapist, have a role here, and that is providing a healthy corrective experience for people. A lot of times people have relationships in their life where they have not been modeled good communication, respect, trust, safety, how to navigate conflict, how to agree to disagree, right? Like a lot of times people are not shown what to do. And so a big part of my job as a therapist is to provide a corrective experience, and also to show and model what I want in return, or what actually constitutes healthy behaviors, healthy communication, healthy conflict resolution, assertiveness, boundary setting, all of those things that people oftentimes are coming to therapy and in some way maybe working towards. So I want to acknowledge it, and I want to go ahead and let them know, hey, this is happening, or hey, this feels like a boundary violation for me, and I have mentioned this before, and this is real. Like, we need to talk about it and acknowledge it. Now the wording for that can be whatever you like it to be. I would say make sure it stays assertive and conveys, hey, you're the client, I respect you, I understand this is popping up for you, or that this is your request, or what have you, and I respect me, and as the therapist, this is my boundary, this is my non-negotiable, and there's something happening right now where I feel like you're pushing against that, you're not respecting it, or you're potentially completely crossing it. So what that could look like is, if a client is not respecting the attendance policy, I might say something like, hey, as we've previously discussed, I do need to be notified 24 hours in advance unless it's an emergency. if you are going to be late or not going to be able to attend for any reason, as you have previously agreed upon. I have noticed that the past several weeks, you have let me know very last minute, and that actually is not in accordance with the attendance policy that we set. And I think we need to talk about this because I am wondering how I can help and what we can do to make sure that this is something that you're going to be able to adhere to moving forward. I'm not judging. There's a lot of ways that I could have said that, but I am trying not to be confrontational, but I'm also saying, "Hey, you did agree to this and you're not doing it, so let's talk about it." I have no idea what's going on in their life. And so it might be easy for me to get frustrated, be upset, be pissed off, but what if they have something going on lately and they haven't disclosed that? Well, I want to confront it so I'm aware of that issue and also bring this to their attention that, hey, this is continuing to happen. But I don't want to quickly jump on it in a place where I'm saying, oh, well, I know that they're just trying to be disrespectful. What if they have something going on that they haven't disclosed to us yet, and that's caused them issues? What if they've had issues with childcare, with their health, with other things that are going on that have caused them to have issues with attendance that if I knew about as a therapist, I could help them better address. Oftentimes, this is what's going on. And so I just want to bring that to their attention. Now, let's say there's an issue with texting. So let's say I have previously talked to a client before and I have said, I don't text. And for confidentiality reasons or what have you, you can email me or give me a phone call, but I'm not going to respond to text. And let's say they text me and they're frequently telling me things that are personal. They're disclosing information that we need to talk about in therapy. They're texting me late in the evening, in the middle of the night, and this keeps happening. So this would be a really good opportunity to go, hey, listen, I got your text last night, and the reason I didn't respond is because of this. And I want to talk to you about texting. As I've mentioned before, I do not text and I will not respond to text. And you've been texting me things that I feel like are concerning and that we really need to address in session, or that I would really appreciate a phone call about because I think a phone call is warranted in these types of situations. I want to make sure you understand that I'm not going to respond via text. And I am curious what is leading you to continue to text me when we've talked about email or phone call. What I've done is I've said, hey, here's the issue. This is what's happening. I'm wondering what's happening here that's causing you to continue to text me. And let me seek to understand. I don't want to be judgmental or anything like that. Don't want to show frustration of like, oh, you're making me frustrated that you're texting me in the middle of the night or whatever. I'm just trying to understand. I'm trying to make sure that we maintain a good relationship and I am addressing the issue. So always address the issue and acknowledge what's happening first and foremost. Don't push it on the rug. Don't pretend it's not happening. Don't pretend it's not real. That is not helpful for you or the client. Another thing that I would make sure you do is to talk about what you actually would like to see instead. So if you don't want them to text you, if there's an issue with attendance, if there is an issue with the way that they are maybe communicating and they are being um, maybe they're being aggressive, maybe they are throwing things, maybe they're making you feel unsafe, whatever it might be, what I would do is tell them what behavior you would like to see instead. So if X, Y, or Z happens, I would like you to respond this way. Is that something you're willing or agreeing to do? And make sure you get their buy in for that. And then if they do it again, acknowledge, seek to understand, bring it back up. And if there comes a time where the boundary issue is in those extreme situations, then I think we might need to talk about, is this the best fit? Do we need to terminate? Do I need to refer you out? What have you? But for most boundary issues, what I find is that a conversation to help bring awareness and attention to them about how they're coming across in a way that is focused on the therapeutic work and helping them gain tools to show up better in their lives and in the people's lives that they're a part of actually is helpful. And if you address it, it stops happening so frequently. So again, that's not for everybody. That's not a blanket statement, but that's what I oftentimes see. So we want to make sure that we are also referring back to the work. If they're having an issue with relationships, with opening up to people, with organization, with follow through, and they're directly pushing a boundary that actually has to do with that, I would also make sure that I'm referring it back to the work and going, this actually might be something that could help us when we're addressing this goal. Or let's really look at this because I'm wondering if this is happening in other areas of your life that could be impacting this goal that you've set. So I want to refer it back to the work and make sure that it is being addressed in a way that is therapeutic, supportive, empathetic, while still being assertive and saying, hey, I'm a therapist and I'm allowed to have my own boundaries and I'm allowed to have my own feelings about this. And the way that you're coming across is negatively impacting or could negatively impact the work if we don't address it in some way. I would also make sure that if you are having some negative feelings, you are taking that and dealing with that in your own supervision, consultation, or seeking your own therapy around that. Because, like I said earlier, those emotions, they don't belong in the therapy room. The client does not need to know that you're pissed off, that you're frustrated, that this is making you upset. Like, they don't need to know all of that. You can say, it feels X when you do that. I would caution you though to not put too much emphasis on that because then that makes it more about you. And really, we want to just stay in a place of, hey, like I'm noticing this and this is not what we agreed upon. Help me understand what's happening for you. Or, hey, when you do this, I I'm having a hard time with X. And so let's talk about how we can show up for each other in a way that makes sense, that is supportive, and that feels respectful for each other's boundaries. So again, working relationship, therapeutic relationship, making sure that that is the forefront of how I'm addressing things and talking about things. And I'm taking my time and my own personal time off to seek supervision, seek consultation, or go to my own therapy. I am not in any way making the client feel like it's their responsibility to take care of my emotional response or anything like that. I want to stay in a place of control and emotional regulation when I'm having this conversation and really continue to always put it back on the work and how I can help the client address this issue, which is probably showing up in other aspects of their life, and really look at how they can show up better or how they can show up in ways that feel more supportive or more in line with our working therapeutic relationship so that we can continue to do work together. So, if you do those things, I am very confident that you're going to be able to navigate this and you're going to be able to navigate this with confidence and with ease. Could it feel uncomfortable in the moment? Sure. Could it feel very frustrating? Absolutely. But we need to be able to address that in our own time and stay curious and empathetic and understanding. And if there's ever a time where you feel like the boundary violation is just too big and you can't stay warm, empathetic, non judgmental, non biased, then it's probably best to really look at, is the therapeutic relationship salvageable or do we need to terminate or refer them out? I hope this was helpful. If you have any video ideas or any questions that you want me to answer, make sure you leave that in the comments below. And until next time.